Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to another episode video of Fire Fridays. This is your midday mindset reset. I'm your host, Natasha Bryant. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, confidence mindset coach, author, speaker, and the owner of Speak Like Transformation and Mental Health and Wellness practice located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And for those who are like me in one of the states where this snowstorm is coming, I hope that you are getting prepared, staying warm. I went to the grocery store yesterday. Yesterday was Thursday at 12 p.m. and the grocery store was still crazy. I thought I was doing something big. I thought I was being proactive, being smart. I go on Thursday, midday while people at work. No, it was still crowded. So I don't know where it's like where you are at, but we are over here preparing for this crazy storm that's predicted over the weekend. And I just want to thank you for joining me for another Fire Friday. If you're joining me on LinkedIn, hey, what's up? Thank you for joining me. If you're joining me on YouTube, on the Speak Like Transformation TV channel, hey, what's up? Make sure whether you're joining me on LinkedIn or YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're on LinkedIn, hop on over to the Speak Life Transformation TV YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this right now live on YouTube, hit that like button. If you're watching a replay, hit the like button. Comment, share your thoughts as we have this conversation today. Now, last week, I did a full-on workshop. This was supposed to be 20, 30 minutes. I went into 40 minutes last week, did a whole workshop series on the 3 sabotaging habits. So if you missed that, let me tell you, I was dropping gems on top of gems on top of gems. Wasn't even expecting to do all that, but make sure you check it out, especially if you're trying to figure out what are the habits that are blocking you from really executing your 2026 goals. That video right there is going to help you. So make sure you go to the Speak Like Transformation TV YouTube channel to check that out. Now, today's conversation is going to be another one where you're going to need the pen. You're going to need your notes app to take the notes so you can be able to really execute the different strategies that I'm going to give you today when it comes to overcoming, pleasing, perfecting, and proving. I call these the 3 Ps. And specifically, we're going to talk about how you can't scale, you can't lead if you're pleasing, proving, or protecting. So let's first talk about how this leads to being stuck. Women are often coming to me saying they feel stuck. They feel stuck on really executing the vision that they have for themselves, whether it's building the business, scaling the business, whether it's growing and moving up the ladder when it comes to their professional career. And there's so many different reasons why women can feel stuck. And we talked about 2 of those reasons the last 2 Fire Fridays. But today we're going to be talking about how stuck is happening. The feeling of stuck is happening because you are because you're in this place where you keep negotiating your power. And the things you're negotiating, right? You're negotiating your power because you're trying to be liked. You're negotiating your power because you're trying to be validated. And you're negotiating your power because you're trying to be seen as enough. And as long as you're negotiating your power, you're losing your power. You're losing your power to show up as your authentic self. You're losing your power to show up and do what you know is best for you. Because now you're giving your power over to others. You're giving your power over to external validation. And then therefore, how you're showing up and what scaling looks like, what leading looks like is being based on that and not being based on what truly matters most to you. So let's first talk about these 3 Ps and what they are. We're going to first go into pleasing. Pleasing is where you find yourself shrinking your own boundaries. And this eliminates growth and limits growth because instead of really advocating for what you truly want and need, instead of really standing up for your desires, you end up minimizing, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. It's not that big of a deal, right? You end up engaging in passive communication. So even if you did set a boundary, you backtrack, all because there is this worry or this fear that you're going to rock the boat. There's this worry or this fear that you can be seen as selfish. There's this worry or fear that you can be seen as being too much. There's this worry or fear of disappointing others. And there's this worry or fear and of leaving others behind, all because you're trying to be liked. Let's talk about proving. Proving is where you find yourself over delivering from insecurity. And you may be asking, Natasha, what is the insecurity? The insecurity is there is this fear of not bringing value. There's this fear of like showing up and not showing that you bring value to the table. There's this other fear of failing and not constantly being on top and succeeding. And there's another insecurity or fear of being seen as ordinary. Like, I don't want to just be seen as someone who just does mediocre things or just ordinary. Like, I want to be seen as someone who is doing things with excellence, right? And all of that then leads to you over delivering, overworking, overperforming. Now, let's talk about perfecting. Perfecting is where you find yourself delaying execution to avoid judgment. That's where the procrastination lies. That's where the hesitation lies, right? And here, what the fear is connected to being seen as incompetent. I don't want to send out that email because I don't want to be seen as I don't know what I'm talking about. Or you might be drafting the email and working on this draft over and over again because you want to make sure you say the right thing. So when people read it, you sound confident. Or it may be where you're worried about people saying negative things about you. Whatever that negative thing is about, if you said something wrong or did something wrong or didn't know enough information or what have you, right? And so all of that leads to you trying to be perfect and show up perfectly. So there's no imperfections, there's no mistakes that anybody can ever point out or talk about. And what that all leads to is you trying to control the narrative people have of you. Now, as you can see, all these things leads to emotional exhaustion because you're doing a lot of song and dance. You're doing a lot of tap dancing, right? Even tap-toeing because you might be walking on eggshells, right? All because you're trying to be liked, all because you're trying, to be validated, and all because you're trying to be seen as enough. Summary, you're trying to convince people. You're trying to do all this convincing because when people see you as enough, then you feel as though you're enough. If people are saying you're enough, whether it's through their actions or through the verbal praise, then that's evidence, that's facts that you are enough. If you're performing and you're doing all these excellent things and you're succeeding in all these ways and you have all these accomplishments, then those outcomes are evidence that you are enough. Now, let's go into like how this all really where this all comes from psychologically, like the roots, the foundation of where this need to please, perfect, and prove comes from. Well, one is your self-worth ends up being tied to your performance. If your self-worth is tied to your performance, then you're going to be doing all that song and dance. I talked about this in the last Fire Fridays about how this becomes an identity attachment problem or issue. And the reason why it's an identity attachment problem or issue is because you are identifying your identity with your work, how well you do things, how much you are succeeding. And as long as you're doing things well, as long as you're succeeding with excellence and above and beyond, then that proves, that equates to you being enough, right? Another root cause that can be causing this to show up as a habit for you as an adult is that throughout your childhood, there were these validation patterns. An example of a validation pattern in childhood is when you did well academically, you would often get a lot of praise from your teachers, praise from your parents. You might even may have even received praise from your peers. And as a result of that, that level of validation made you believe like, oh, when I do well, people like me. When I do well, I get these different privileges. Or an example, it may have not been academics. It may have been within your extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or drama, whatever. And you were really good at those things. And as a result of that, you became the popular kid. As a result, you became known for this specific skill. And therefore, there was validation that you are enough. People like you because of this. You get these certain privileges because of this, right? And the thing about this is, I want you to understand, I tell my clients this all the time. A lot of the habits, not even a lot, majority of the habits that we have as adults, those sabotaging habits, those maladaptive behaviors, happen because there was something that, as a child, that we defined as being safe, right? That was very simple though. And when we think about it, when we think about these behaviors as a child, and this is all subconsciously, you're not really aware of this as a child, but it's very subconscious, but it's very simple. It's very ABC 1, 2, 3, right? It's like, oh, when I achieve, when I perform well, or I do well in sports, or do well in drama, people like me. People want to be around me. Teachers give me praise. I get privileges at home, right? Oh, so let me just keep on doing that. It's very simple. It's not very complicated. It just becomes more complicated as we evolve as adults. But the foundation, the reason why they occur, it all is the same simple. When I did well, I got positive praise. And I felt important. I felt validated. I felt worthy. Very simple, right? And so that's how it can connect with those childhood validation or patterns. Another example of the childhood validations of patterns is that the role you played as a kid, right? So let's just say here you were in a type of family where your parents weren't around or just weren't able to care for you the way they were supposed to. And so you had to be the one to step in and be the caregiver for your siblings, for example, or yourself, right? And so therefore you were seen as the responsible one. You were seen as the go-to. Your siblings always came to you for the answer. They didn't really go to their parents. They came to you because you were the one that pretty much was caring for them, not your parents. And so you became the responsible one. You became the one that fixed and solved people's problems and therefore, or try to manage people's emotions, right? As a kid to create a safe space. And so you end up doing that as an adult. Or another example is that maybe you grew up in a household where you had a sibling or siblings that were always in trouble. And so you took it upon yourself as a kid to make sure you do not become a problem child for your parents, because they already got to care, they already got to worry about your sibling, and you don't want to be another person they worry about. They're already stressed about that. You don't want to be another stressor or add any more stress. And so you made it your mission to be the one that was the quote unquote good kid. And then it just evolved as an adult. One last example, like those psychological roots, is where leadership ends up being identified or shaped by fear. Like your leadership identity is shaped by some type of fear of not being enough or showing up as enough, right? So, for example, an example of that is, however you're defining a leader, a good leader looks like this. A good leader is someone that knows all the answers. That when their employees come to them, they have the answers. When their colleagues come to them, they know what to say. They are showing up and they have the answers for in that way. And or a good leader is a good model. So they're doing everything well. They're on top, right? You can't lead if you're not achieving above the people that you are leading. So the leader has to be the one that is excelling and exceeding and doing better than the people below them. Because why else would how are they going to lead somebody else, or how are they going to be able to coach or train somebody else if they're not ahead of them in knowledge or skills, right? And so that then leads to this fear that of not being that, right? And so it causes you to show up to feel like you know everything all the time. I mean, you might not know everything, but you're forcing yourself to know all the things, right? It also could be causing you to force yourself to show up and constantly achieve to prove that you deserve to be in this leadership role. So those are some examples of how it can show up on the psychological end. Now, let's go into some strategies. And when you're thinking about the what we just talked about earlier too, about the psychological roots, and also just the foundation of what pleasing, perfecting, improving means and what it looks like, it's really also understanding, right? Like there's a difference when you're recognizing your identity, the vision you have for yourself, right? And how you want to actually show up. There's a big difference between who you want to be versus who you're performing to be. I'm going to say that one more time. There is a big difference between who you want to be versus who you're performing to be. Because when you start performing, when you start showing up based on this performance of how you should be, it's all based on the should. Well, if I'm a leader, I should be showing up this way. If I'm going to scale and be a successful business person, this is how I should be showing up. And that should is based on who? Who said that? Who are coming up with these rules? And a lot of times those rules, those expectations are based on what society is saying, based on what the field that you're in is saying, based on what friends and peers are saying, but it has nothing to do with or even close to based on what you're saying. And as a result of that, a lot of times what happens is you then minimize what you're saying, especially if it doesn't align with what everybody else is saying. Then you begin to question, well, if how I'm visioning myself to be as a leader or entrepreneur, that doesn't equate to what other people are saying. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm like way off the mark. Maybe what I am saying is going to lead to failure instead of success. Or people that are succeeding, they don't do it this way. They're not thinking that way. So maybe I shouldn't be showing up in this way. And then you lose yourself as a person. There's a difference between being inspired by others and just taking some key points and learning from others and then trying to and then figuring out, well, how does this apply to me? How do I want to make it make sense for me, compared to seeing how somebody else is succeeding and taking it as a template and just copying it into your life? Big difference. Now let's go to the strategies. Remember the self film framework? The self framework helps you reset yourself, kind of reassess to make sure that the things in your life, the people in your life, all are helping you achieve the goals you're trying to achieve. So the essence self is strategy. So when we're thinking about the strategy, what is a strategy that's going to help you really get rid of those three P's? Well, one strategy is this: choose one imperfection action you'll take weekly. One perfection action that you will practice on a weekly basis. And the reason why this is important is because you will stop trying to perfect everything if you give yourself the permission to make mistakes. You will stop trying to please other people if you recognize that even if I make mistakes, I still bring value to this situation, to this friendship, or to this relationship. And if nobody likes it, it's okay. Right? And then you stop proving yourself because, similar to what I just said, you recognize that even if I make mistakes, I still bring value. I used to work in schools. My background is actually in schools. I worked in schools for several years as a school social worker, school counselor, clinician. And when it came to classroom management, behavior management, one of the tips that I would often give teachers is to model making mistakes. Because if let's just say the issue of the student behavior is when they make a mistake, they have a full-on meltdown. They have an outburst, they walk out the room, whatever it is, right? And as a whole class, right, a classroom, the way to model it as a full classroom management strategy, where it doesn't just target the one student, but it targets the whole class, is when you make a mistake. I would tell the teachers, when you make a mistake, make a big deal out of making a mistake, right? Be like, oh, I'm so sorry, class. Miss Bryant totally put the wrong questions on the homework, and that probably made homework way more difficult than it really needed to be. I am so sorry. So we're going to try that again. I'm going to give you the homework again tonight with the correct questions so you actually can be able to do it and not feel so overwhelmed by it, right? That's just an example of what that would look like in modeling. And the more the teacher would model, the more the students recognize, like, oh, it's okay to make a mistake. Like, it's not a big deal. Especially when the teacher's like, it's not a big deal. We'll just try again. I'll just give it. I'll redo it, send it out again. We'll try this again, right? And that's the point for you when it comes to choosing that one imperfection action. Make the mistake and brush it off. Make the mistake and or just show up. Don't show up perfectly, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be you actually making a mistake or acknowledging that you made a mistake and being okay with it. It's also don't show up perfectly. Energy. E in self is energy. Energy is all about managing, right? Being efficient with your time and prioritization. So, a strategy for that when it comes to getting rid of these three P's is reduce the emotional bandwidth spent managing others' perceptions of you. Remember, we talked about that when you're trying to manage other people's perceptions of you, you're trying to control something you don't have any control over. And so, this is eliminating that. I honestly wouldn't even say reduce, eliminate. Where you're not spending your time and your energy on trying to make sure people feel a certain way or trying to you'll think a certain way when they're around you. So being okay with if somebody's upset, this is not my job to make them feel better. It's not my job to make everybody have a good time or make sure everybody's no that's their job to deal with their emotions and being okay with that. Or I don't know. Listen, I'm going to show up. I don't know how people are going to think about it. I don't know if they're going to like it, love it, hate it. But that's their choice. I'm going to leave that to them. I'm just going to focus on showing up. Then we have L for limits. L for limits is where you identify a non-negotiable boundary of scaling. Remember, limits is all about boundary setting. And so this is where you identify what is that non-negotiable boundary when it comes to scaling and or leading, to be honest. So an example of that could be, where you set a non-negotiable boundary when it comes to it. Maybe it's a specific task. Maybe you recognize like there's this task that I'm doing a lot, I'm focusing a lot of my energy on or time on, and it's actually not a necessity. It's not a priority, and or it's not going to help me really scale. So I'm only going, but I do need to do it, but I don't need to spend as much time on it. So I'm going to make sure that I only spend X amount of time on this so I can make sure I have more time to do what I really need to focus on. And or another one is a task. I'm not doing this task, right? Like this task is actually not my job. This is actually for X to be doing. So I'm going to let this person do their job. And I'm not going to do that. So I can then be able to focus on what I need to focus on when it comes to scaling my business or leading. Last but not least is F. F is for fans. Remember, fans are the people that you surround yourself around. So the strategy for this one, the tip for this one is surround yourself with people who are comfortable with your growth. During the first Fire Friday, we talked about identity, and we talked about how it's important to surround yourself around people who are really helping you grow within your identity and not grow or highlight your insecurities. So important. Are you around people that's really going to help you show up as your authentic self, or are you around people that's causing you to fall into your insecurities, feel even more insecure? And when it comes to that, being comfortable with your growth, that's so important because you don't have the time and the energy to be surrounded around people who become jealous of your growth. Because then that leads to you managing their emotions. Oh, I'm not going to tell this person because I know how they get. They start to feel insecure. They start to feel a little upset. They throw a little jazz. So I'm just going to not say anything, or I'm going to make sure I don't tell them the whole. I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to say that I did all this because I don't want them to feel upset. You shouldn't have to do that. That would be pleasing. Or an example of proving would be surrounding yourself around people who you feel like you got to compete with, where it's like this constant competition. So they're not comfortable with your growth. They feel like they got to always kind of one up you. So then you feel like you got to one up them. So you got to prove that, no, I'm on the same caliber or if not better, proving. Or when it comes to perfecting, you don't have time to surround yourself around people who want to point out every time you make a mistake. Nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for that. So then you find yourself trying to be perfect and show up a certain way, or around people who do not show their imperfections. You're surrounding yourself around people who are not vulnerable, who are not opening up about their mistakes. So then it causes you to feel the pressure to constantly show up perfectly. You don't have time for that. So surround yourself around people that feel comfortable with your growth and also help you celebrate your growth. Now, when we're talking about mindset, right? It's really understand this is so important. I really want you to, if you don't take anything else from today, take this, right? Write this down. You can't scale in rooms where you're trying to fit in. And the reason is because scaling requires you to take up space. If you are walking in rooms where you're trying to be liked, you're trying to be validated, and you're trying to feel like you're enough, then you are going to shrink, and shrink some more. But when you walk into a room and you recognize, listen, whoever's going to like me is going to like me. They're my people. Whoever don't, that's okay. Right? And you walk into the room feeling like, I know I belong here. I don't need to prove that I belong here. I know I belong here, whether someone agrees with it or not. I know I belong here. When you walk into a room and you're like, if I mess up, if I'm in a conversation and I stutter or I pronounce a word wrong, that doesn't mean I don't have any more value. I still have the same amount of value I had before I made the mistake, right? When you walk in the room with that type of authority, that type of confidence, then you take up all the space that you deserve in any room that you're in. And that's a mindset flex right there. So we talked about a lot. I hope that you received all the gems that you needed to help you scale without pleasing, proving, and protecting, to help you lead without pleasing, proving, and protecting or perfecting. And if you want more, I am excited about this workshop I have coming up next week. Reset Yourself for 2026 is happening on Wednesday, the 29th the 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Registration is going to be closing soon, so make sure you register. You'll see right there the link to register for this workshop. It is a 60-minute workshop that's going to help you really come up with all the different strategies you need to execute the goals you need for 2026. Can you believe it? January is almost over. Do not continue or enter or go through this month or go through this year without following through on your goals. And this workshop is going to help you do that. I'm going to go even more and more depth about the self framework. We talked about the self framework today. That gave you a little kind of taste of what that looks like, that process, those strategies, how practical it is, how to apply it. I'm all about practical application. The educator in me will not allow myself to be on any stage, whether it's virtually or in person, without giving you some practical tools. You don't have time to waste. You don't have time to be sitting around. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to equip you with the tools that you need to live the life that you want to live as your best self, unapologetically. So if that's the type of vibe you're on, if that is the type of time that you're on, then you need to register for Reset Yourself for 2026. Again, visit speakliketransformation.com to get more information. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, Speak Like Transformation TV, make sure you do so. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram as well, Facebook. My handle's at the bottom of the screen. Well, it was at the bottom of the screen, but you'll see at the bottom of the screen that was listed all throughout my conversation with you today. And we're going to have another Fire Friday as we wrap up January. January 30th is here next week, y'all. I'm still in shock. Like, the time is going. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Again, stay warm during the winter storm. And I will see you next Friday for Fire Friday.